Hello everyone, and welcome to another Gear Talk. We do these every other Thursday at 5. Today we're going to be talking about, once again, I haven't made a lot of these and I've been wanting to make more, the relationship series video. So I've done one before on Marcus and Hoffman, Kim and Rom, and then I also just looked up on the most recent one I did, which was also Keegan and Mac. And I gotta tell you right now, I feel like since then, my editing and my vocal cues for everything has gotten a little bit better. Not by a lot, but a little bit. I do a little bit more editing to cut out the pauses and everything, so I feel like, in my own sense, I've become a better person in life and also in editing, but not by much. We're still here. So we're going to talk about the relationship today between Tai and Marcus, and basically how, and I've used this analogy a lot in the past, how these two were like the pillars, the two that held up like the morale of like the frontline soldiers that were out there. Yes, we had Cole in the background that brought everyone into the cog when he announced that he's becoming a soldier, and whenever he's out there, everyone's having a good time. But these were the two seasoned gears that when people looked at them, they were like, these are the guys that are going to lead us to victory. So let's take a look at like the history of these two together and what led to their final moments together, shall we? Tai we're going to start off with because of the fact that I've talked so much about Tai. I've already gone through, as of the last video we did The Quickening, which is Tai's comic. We've done the Spirit of a Warrior Dies video, which is about Tai. We've done Tai's discussion series. We've covered the Zeta Squad series with him in it. We've covered a lot of Tai. Tai is becoming one of those fan favorites like Jace on the channel, where for some reason, there's a lot of videos involving Tai. Just like Jace, there's a lot involving Jace. I would love if there were more Dizzy ones, but we'll get to that one when the day comes. So we're going to talk about kind of like Tai and Marcus and how they met. And they met actually on Tai's main island, which I believe is the island of Iroma, I believe it is. So this was after the UIR started their incursion on the South Islands. And this is where Tai was a warrior. He fought. He was a trained, seasoned warrior among his people. And while he was out fighting off the soldiers of the UIR, he comes back to his village to see everything destroyed, fires everywhere, his loved ones gone. It is just him left from his village. Now, this is not all the South Islands. He's not the last South Islander. There are many others, but it's just for this area, that was his village. He goes out and he starts going on a killing spree of any soldiers he can find, where he comes across, much like we talked about in The Quickening, a young Marcus Phoenix. And this is where like their relationship first sparks. Their first meeting is actually where they don't become friends, but that mutual respect that they have for each other is kind of formed at this moment, where Marcus, without even looking at him, is moving forward. This is in the middle of a rainstorm. Marcus is basically just walking through as a solo by himself soldier. We have Tai in the background with an arrow locked right onto him. This is only like maybe 30 to 50 feet away from him. In the middle of the rainstorm where you can't hear anything, a trained warrior in camouflage, like behind the trees and everything. And Marcus just says, I wouldn't do that if I were you, knows where he is. And this takes Tai back for a moment because he's like, how did you know I was here, kind of? And Marcus tells him, look, I'm not going to lie to you or anything. We're not saints. We are not the people who killed your people, but we are fighting the UIR much like you are, and we are going to be winning this war. Join up with us if you want. If not, that's fine. And he just walks away and leaves Tai there. This moment kind of cements a lot of things for both of them going forward in their stories. For instance, you have Tai saying like, this man is very obviously a warrior in his own right, a soldier. This man is a tried and true soldier. To know where I am, keep everything basically like there were no fears, there was no anger, there was no malice. It was just he's continuing on his way as a soldier. And then you have Marcus understanding this man is a very, very deadly warrior of this island. In fact, he even says, like, join with the cog, join us, and you can fight against the UIR. He understands this man would be an asset to the cog. He understands this man is a force of nature, possibly. And it just so happens, Tai takes him up on the offer. He takes him up on the offer, and he is placed on the 26th RTI, along with Marcus Phoenix. We have the Pendulum Wars now with these two, where they fight side by side a lot of the time. You'll see in the story, at least with how they map it out with the books, comics, games, they always come across one another. It's always that situation where now and then they are on the same squad or they're fighting like in the 26th RTI, but it's never a situation a lot of the time where they are openly choosing to be with each other on a squad. Much like how Marcus and Dom want it to always be them together on a squad, Delta. But we have it where Tai is kind of doing his own thing, but he understands Marcus Phoenix. He understands, the other, and like I've said before, the other pillar. The other person that's on this level with me. And Tai and Marcus, I should say, never see it as that way of them being better or them being the pillars that hold up the cog. They mostly see it as like a mutual respect among one another, but it's the rest of the cog who sees these two in that light. You need to understand that as the story goes with everything, whether it be the Pendulum Wars or it also be the Locust War, these two were always seen as they are the deadliest foot soldiers we basically have. Yes, during the wars, you have people like Cole come into the fray. You have Baird, you have Dom, you have Clayton Carmine of all these characters. These powerhouses that you find on the field. But you always see them, at least when the cog sees it, not the characters, but the cog itself as a whole, see them as on a lesser tier than like Marcus or Tai. These are the two where if they were to fall, this is a very bad omen, which we get to with Tai. But these two are the ones who, they are fighting on the front lines. They are the ones that can take all of this brunt of like all these soldiers, all this damage, all these locusts, and they can keep pushing forward. At one point during the Locust War, you have Tai get caught up in an explosion and walk out of the thing. Alright? You have it where Marcus Phoenix, who is the son of Adam Phoenix, you would think is just basically like a Nepo baby going into the military. No, he chooses the foot soldier option and he works his way to sergeant, and he is leading these characters, like these squads, characters, everyone we come across, into the heart of battle. At one point, Operation Hollow Storm, literally going to the actual palace, the headquarters, the heart of the Locust army. He is there. You see where this is going, kind of. Like, yes, these characters are all deadly in their own right, but then there are these two who are going through head first and basically opening the way for the rest of the cog. Got a little bit ahead of myself there. We'll jump back to the Pendulum Wars quick. It's an exciting story of these two, don't get me wrong. But you have it where in the Pendulum Wars they fight for the 26th RTI, and Tai is always there fighting alongside Marcus. Even at Asfio Fields, Tai is there fighting. He is there. In the comics, it shows him fighting. In the books, he's there fighting, and he makes it out alive, and he makes it to the end of the Pendulum Wars, where he is still fighting alongside Marcus. Once the war ends, and the new war begins with the Locust, you have Delta Squad formed. The main Delta that we know. Now, there's many iterations of it that happen. For instance, the 26th RTI was basically just the 26th RTI. Yes, now and then they did break up into squads, but a lot of the time they were just all sent as a whole. That's what they were kind of known for. But then you get to the Locust War, and they divvied that up like with Delta, and for a lot of the story it's very hit or miss where Tai is at the time. For instance, we have a lot of the story where he is with Delta, and a lot of the story where he's off doing his own thing or with a different squad. Some of it makes sense, some of it is just kind of, I'm guessing, the cog wanting to move, split these two apart so they have two deadly forces going out. For instance, we have with Zeta Squad, Tai was a part of Zeta Squad. This was 9AE, a year before Marcus actually ended up being sent to prison. So he was kind of just taken away from that and sent out with Zeta to kind of go and clear out Alima. So my assumption with that one is that they just decided to split him off so that he was fighting, on another front. But then after everything went foobar with Zeta and they broke all that apart, they kind of just said, okay, you're going back with Delta. And we see him on Delta many a time before and after Zeta. After Zeta, he is with Marcus's squad. He's a part of that Delta when they have to go and try and save Adam. He's with him for that. He fights alongside him. You have a lot of these characters that see themselves as friends or brothers in arms. For instance, you have Marcus and Dom. They see each other as brothers. When it comes to Marcus and Tai, they see each other as like war brothers. Like they are brothers born of bloodshed and destruction. One sees a soldier fighting his way through, saluting, and making his way up the ranks. The other being a warrior that fights for his people, his tribe, his spirituality, all of his beliefs. And both of them are basically on the same exact path going forward. The only difference is that they were both bred and just dedicated their lives to two different causes, but both the causes are aligned and fighting in that same order. That, for instance, is why Tai was so gung-ho on joining the COG. Also because the UIR was kind of the common enemy, but after that, he's like, I'm already here. I'm a warrior fighting a warrior's war right now. Let's do it. Another thing to take into account is that Marcus is not a man who makes friends that easily. He doesn't. In fact, I thought about this before the video of like, who are Marcus's friends, like his actual friends? Not acquaintances, not people he battles with, but actual friends that he would let into his personal life. And there are not that many. Just thinking about it, Anya's there, Dom was there, and who else will we have? Baird and Cole we see he does later on because they are the well-known Delta, and he even considers them like the uncles to JD even towards the end. Dizzy was one of them because Dizzy was like the one exception for how Marcus viewed people. It took a lot of time to get used to Marcus or Marcus to get used to you before he would let you in a little bit, and for Marcus, letting it in is saying 3 words instead of just a grunt. So Dizzy was like the one exception because everybody loved Dizzy. Even Marcus liked Dizzy. There was no one that really hated Dizzy. So these are like the one exception that didn't have to earn his way in. He just kind of fit in there. Jace did have to earn his way in. Going and joining Delta and everything, fighting up the ranks, seeing Marcus as like a war hero, and slowly making his way to seeing him as like, we're brothers in arms right now. That took a while for Jace and Marcus even to accept like, hey, this kid is actually someone who's going to be fighting alongside us and can hold his own pretty well. Now, it's not like Marcus ever looked down on other soldiers. He never looked down on any of the Carmines, for instance. Never did. But he wasn't getting that close to Ben. He wasn't getting that close to Anthony. Even other soldiers, like when it came to Kim, he wasn't getting close to Kim. Sam was there, but Sam was never like, we're having dinner on Saturdays when the war is done, you, me, and Baird, and we're all just going to have a nice get-together. It was never like that. She was kind of just an acquaintance. She was more close to Dom than anyone else. But one of the characters that did work their way through and knew Marcus the longest out of that group, aside from Dom and Anya, was Tai Kaliso. Tai was there fighting alongside Marcus during one war into another. He was there. He was always fighting beside him. Tai would always be mysterious now and then or like go off. Like between the 6 weeks of peace, like Tai was around, but he was never like in one central location where they could say, let's go visit Tai. No, Tai was doing his own thing. But when they needed Tai, Tai appeared. And Tai was there for Marcus, much like Marcus was there for Tai. Which essentially leads us next into Gears of War 2 when it comes down to Hollow Storm. Tai and Marcus were never going to be the kind of guys who would see each other and be like, oh, Tai, Marcus, oh, how are you? Oh, come here, buddy, and go in for a hug. They were never those types of people. They never would be. And that was a very well-known thing just from the first Gears with Marcus and from the books for Tai. Because Tai was introduced in the books first before the games. So when they meet each other in 2 over at Jacinto for the hospital, they see each other and they welcome one another. But it's nothing like, oh, Tai, how you doing? No, they've known each other so much and come across each other so much in the war, they're probably just like, oh, yeah, it's Tai, here he is. It's probably something like that. And at this time, Tai is not a part of Delta. He fights alongside Delta, but he's not with Delta. Because again, Tai, he was doing his own thing. He was still fighting the Locusts while Marcus was over in prison for 4 years. So it's not like they're going to just be keeping him on Delta. He did stay on Delta for a while. It's not like, the moment Marcus went to prison, Delta was disbanded. No, Delta was still around. During this time even, let's bring this one up since we're talking about the books. During this time, Tai is one of the first people set to go into a prison break for Marcus. Dom is trying to figure out how to get Marcus out and really does contemplate doing a prison break. And during this idea of trying to get people in there to get Marcus out, he doesn't tell anyone except for Jace and Tai. They're the only 2 that know about what's going on, and Tai is totally down for it. He's like, let's go get him. Let's go get Marcus. Let's do this. So while they're getting all that set up and they're ready to go into the fray of it, obviously the Locust War happens. Marcus in the slab, the grand order of everyone's out, their prison break happens, not Dom's, but Marcus's. And Marcus chooses to stay behind to give everyone time, and then it's like, okay, let's go get him. A lot of stuff in between, but essentially just remember, Tai was down for a prison break for his buddy. He was down to do this. This warrior, this man of an institution of war was like, that's my buddy. Let's go get him out. That's essentially what it came down to. Now, obviously, a more mystique way of talking with Tai is like, yes, my brother, caged. We must free him. That's more of how Tai would have seen it. But he's on a different squad because obviously this force of nature, this death and destruction known as Tai, still has to fight. It's not like he can take all of his time on personal leave to go and bust out his buddy out of prison. So he goes off and he continues to fight. This is where they come across each other in 2, and this is where they continue to fight alongside back to back, both of them against the world, against the Locusts. These two forces of nature going against an entire army, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. As they're fighting, they make their way to going into Hollow Storm, and you have it where Scourge appears before they're about to go and get dropped down, and it comes down, of all people, Dizzy to try and hold him off. Props to you, bud. But then Tai does make it out before he's able to drop in, and he starts holding off Scourge. And at this point, they're already trying to get out to fight, but Marcus is trying even harder now to get out to assist with Tai, to at least help him. And I feel like if he would have actually made it out there to fight, if Tai would have actually allowed them to join the battle, because I feel even if they got out, Tai would have still wanted to fight him one-on-one. I feel like if you had Dizzy, Marcus, Dom, Tai all against Scourge, I feel Scourge would have probably tried to retreat. I don't think they would have killed him. I think Scourge is smart enough he would have made a run for it. But, I mean, with those three powerhouses and Dizzy, I feel like they really probably would have had a good shot of it, but unfortunately that's not how it ended up, and they get separated from Tai. And Marcus, he trusts in Tai's abilities. He 100% does, because up to this point, it's the idea of like Tai is this undefeatable monster on the battlefield. No one can take down Tai. This man is built different. They're talking about that all of Gears of War 2. Marcus is one of them pitching in with all of that, and they're just telling Ben, the newbie on the group, all about this. And Ben is like, oh my god, this guy. Much like how many COG soldiers see these two either joining in or believing it throughout all these years. This goes until they finally come across Tai one more time. And this is the part where we learn about what happened to Tai. The processing, the torture. Scorch personally brought him back into the Hollow so he'd get processed and beaten. And we learn that Tai is just a husk. He's lost everything. His soul, his mind. It's just left. There's nothing left anymore. And Marcus sees this and understands that. He understands this is not the Tai I know. But at the same time, they're in the middle of a battlefield. So he hands him a Gnasher and he says, we got to get going, Tai. Let's get going. I want to feel a part of Marcus was probably even believing, like, this is still Tai. This is the Tai I know. Nothing can get to Tai. Tai is fine. He's been shaken up a bit, but he can still fight. But deep down, I think Marcus knew something was really wrong here. And it leads to the culmination of Tai's death, which is a very well-known moment in all of Gears. And this is one of the only times you see Marcus having this very heavy expression of sadness, shock, all of this from another comrade's death. You had other characters die in the story. You had Anthony, Ben, you had Kim. He was surprised at Kim, but not because of Kim dying, more of how he died. This giant behemoth of a Locust running a knife through his abdomen and lifting him into the air, and then turning to look over at Marcus, seeing Rom for the first time. That was more of what got to his head for Marcus. He was more shocked of what he saw of the action, not the person dying. But Marcus does not normally have that reaction with death. He has been around it a lot as a soldier. He understands death. But seeing his brother-in-arms, this person that was an equal in the COG's eyes, and even to his own at times, seeing him go by his own hands was probably one of the most shocking things Marcus probably could have ever experienced on the battlefield. Now, we get a lot worse later on when he sees his father go again. Dom goes, his own wife leaving later on. All of this happens, but that moment of like, this man who was my brother-in-arms, this man who fought next to me through 2 wars, chose by his own hands to get out of what they did to him. I feel like there's probably anger in Marcus too, like, I'm going to get revenge for what you did to Tai. I'm going to kill every Locust and burn this place to the ground. I feel like that would have been his reaction if it's not, again, in the middle of a battlefield, we're trying to fight our way through. You have Baird screaming in his ear, I have been hearing them doing these things, they're breaking people. Then you have Ben over here, like, but I thought no one could take out Tai. What? All of this Marcus is hearing around him, probably just numb at that moment, but hearing all of this, and all he can do at that moment is just go down to his brother, take his COG tags, and they have to continue forward, which is probably the most heartbreaking moment at that time that Marcus ever had to deal with when it came to like a brother-in-arms or one of his people dying. Obviously, we had Carlos in the past, but at least with his brother Carlos, he was able to take the bits that were remaining at least back over to Aphira, back home at least. Tai, they couldn't do it. Like, they were in the middle of a battle. It's openly stated many a time that they never brought their dead back during the Locust War. All he could bring were his tags. And I imagine for Marcus that had to hurt so much he couldn't even bring him back to the South Islands. And that's where their story ends. Now, obviously, Tai is still very well remembered. Throughout the story of the world of Gears of War, this is still seen as like this monster behemoth of a man that passed. He is still memorized, and he is still etched in the history of the South Islands. They still know him of this day. He has a niece that's still around. But at that time, the COG felt their morale crumble. Again, their pillar, one is gone now. And now you have one holding it all, Marcus. Everything is on Marcus Phoenix at this point. And I felt so bad for both of them. Because you have to think, Tai at one point knew he was going to be leaving. And it's like, I'm gone. I'm gone completely. But before his soul left, the thought of like, Marcus, it's up to you, man. You got to deal with this. I'm sorry. And man, that had to hurt. But that'll do it. I think that covers everything for how they viewed each other, their relationship. I think that's a good covering of the Marcus and Tai relationship right there. So I can't really think of anything else to add. I mean, that was their history. I mean, they met many times in the books, but I mean, again, they just fought next to each other, much like the Pendulum Wars. So I think that'll do it. So I want to thank everyone for watching, thank everyone for making things possible, and thank the patrons for making things possible. When we come back, we're talking more Gears of War. I think the next video up actually is the next issue of the comics. I think that's where we're heading next. But hey, I've got a playlist filled with all this. You want to go through and see hundreds of videos involving the COG and Gears of War and the Locusts and theories. I mean, I got it all set and ready for you, baby. We're always set here for some gear talk, I tell you. So, I'll see you all in the next one. Catch you then. Later.